Welcome back, Atlanta Hawks fans. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. This is your Atlanta Hawks fan show. It's been a while, but we're back now to talk more Hawks basketball. We have a very special guest with us today, CBS NBA reporter Sam Quinn on the show to talk Hawks with me. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. We're finally, summer league's over. I guess this Durant thing's never going to end, but we're finally headed towards the quiet period. It's been a while.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed like a lot of big things were going to happen when free agency started, but now, like I said, the Kevin Durant thing's not really going anywhere. The summer league's gone. And so I guess this would be the perfect time just to chill out now. But before we chill out, I just want to ask you a couple questions about the Atlanta Hawks and their offseason so far. Obviously, the big addition this offseason for them was adding Dejounte Murray from the San Antonio Spurs in a trade that a lot of people feel like is the perfect one for the Hawks for what they were looking for in terms of what they needed to add to the team. How do you think Murray impacts this Hawks team now, being in the backcourt with Trae Young and the team overall?
Yeah, I'm a big fan for a lot of the reasons that have been stated. Having a great defender next to Trae is, I think, essential, just considering he's never going to be very good on that end of the floor. That's just a body thing. It has nothing to do with effort. I do think that's going to help a lot, but I think the real impact he's going to have is that every year Trae Young has been on the Hawks, they've been terrible whenever he's gone to the bench. Well, now they have another all-star point guard to run the offense when Trae sits out. And now you can be maybe a bit more aggressive about resting him here and there. You can manage minutes a little bit more. Now, Trae's been fairly durable since he got to the NBA, but he's a small guard, and these are things that you have to think about. So I do think it's a good fit. I guess I would like to see Trae shoot a slightly higher percentage on threes to make that work with Murray not being a great three-point shooter. But the diet of threes that Trae takes are so hard that it doesn't mean he's not a good shooter. It means he's having to create these insane pull-up threes all the time. Maybe now he doesn't have to do that. Maybe now he can be more of an off-ball player some of the time. People want to make the Stephen Curry comparison. Nobody's Stephen Curry, right? He's not going to be running around screens for 20 seconds out of the 24. But if you can get a little bit more movement, trust Murray to run a little bit more of the offense, I'd feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, too, that, it's good to have that second guy. They're probably going to stack usually when Trae goes to the bench. Murray's going to be point. Murray goes to the bench. Trae is going to be out there, just so they're never, like you said, lacking that ball creator, someone who can run the offense when the other person is out. And I think that will be big for just the overall team and going into the season. So then the next question goes to DeAndre Hunter. Obviously, right now they're having contract negotiations right now. You're hearing different things. Maybe the Hawks are looking at 15, 16 million. Hunter's looking at 20 million. I just want to get your thoughts on that situation. What do you think Hunter is worth right now? And if not, are you confident if you're a Hawks front office member and saying, hey, we're going to go into the season, you got to prove to us that you're worth that money?
I just pay him. I'm just of the opinion that if you play games with wings, it just really rarely goes the way that you want it to, right? I think a somewhat similar comparison here, not really because he was so durable, at least at that point in his career, but I remember Jimmy Butler going through these negotiations with the Bulls, what was it now, 2014, 2013, 15, something in that range, where Jimmy Butler made a pretty reasonable offer to the Bulls and they said no, and he said, okay, fine, I'm going to play out the year and bet on myself, and he ends up getting maxed out, right? And all that needs to happen for Hunter to be in a pretty similar situation is if he stays moderately healthy, he doesn't even have to play all 82 games. If you get 60 games out of DeAndre Hunter at the level he was at, not last season, but the season before, when he was really looking like a breakout candidate, playing good defense, creating his own shot, that's a $25 to $30 million player. Now, the medical risks are pretty glaring there, but I'm not a doctor, so I can't really comment on that. I am just personally of the opinion you lock up wings early and you play it out with bigs. We kind of saw this with Phoenix. They did end up having to match a max offer sheet for DeAndre Ayton, but it was only 4 years, so they ended up saving some money on that. I think with wings, if you mess around, you're really putting yourself out there and risking a huge offer sheet or risking, any number of bad things. So my position is just pay him. I think he's worth it, frankly. I think he's very good. Now, the medical stuff is scary. I'm not a doctor. I try not to comment on that stuff, but I personally just think how many chances are the Hawks going to have now that they've given up so many picks for Murray, they don't really have that many trade assets left. How many chances are they going to have to get a wing with that kind of size, that kind of defensive upside, who can create a little bit, who can make threes? Like, those players don't grow on trees.
Yeah, and it makes a good point. I mean, I think usually as you see in today's game, wings are literally the most important position in the game. If you don't have good wings, it's going to make it difficult for you to win, obviously. I think DeAndre Hunter has, like you said, has had health issues, but also when he has been healthy, has played some really good basketball. And, obviously, we see the summer tape, him getting in the gym, working on different things. We get hyped for it every summer, and when Twitter and NBA fans see that. But, I think that, as long as it makes sense for the Hawks and they feel confident in what he can be, I say you should go ahead and pay him as well. So then my next question goes to, so when you look at the rest of this roster, outside of Trey and outside of Murray, who do you look on this roster and say, all right, so he's probably going to be that next most important player for this team if they want to have more success than they had last year?
Onyeka Okongwu is sort of the swing piece, not just for this year, but I think for the next several, right? I mean, when he got drafted, there were a lot of Bam Adebayo comparisons. I think that's a bit much. I don't think he'll ever protect the rim as well as Adebayo does, but he can be very switchy defensively. I think he's got more offensive upside than he's shown. I think, just from a financial standpoint, you've got Okongwu under contract for 2 more years at a reasonable rate. If you're going to pay Hunter and you're already paying Murray and you're already paying Young, and by the way, like, Murray is underpaid right now, it's not going to be long before he's getting like a real fair market value max contract or something close. I think having that young, cheap center is really important. So if I were the Hawks, I mean, if Okongwu looks good for the first, even maybe training camp for the first month of the season, I would be thinking, let's get off of this Capella contract before it starts to look bad. He's had medical issues too, and he's getting a bit older. So I personally think like their championship upside is the scenario where in 2-3 years, the starting lineup is Trey Young, Dejounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Onyeka Okongwu. I think that's the 5-man unit that has the best balance of defense, spacing, athleticism, ball handling. So if I were them, Capella's the guy that I'm sort of thinking, if Okongwu is as good as we hope, then we can maybe find a deal for Capella. But if Okongwu isn't, then you're kind of stuck in the purgatory, right? Like, they were, the 9 seed last year? If Okongwu doesn't make a jump, Murray can help, but I still think their defense needs more than just Murray.
Yeah, okay. I get that too, because, obviously defense was the biggest issue for the Hawks last year. And, Landry Fields' new GM said we got to come out and really work on that. Obviously, they've gotten some guys like Mo Harkless and the Holiday brothers, but obviously we're looking for maybe more impactful defensive players on that side of the ball. And so my last question before I let you go is, so you mentioned that you feel like the Hawks may still potentially be in the purgatory this year. I was going to ask you, what should their expectations be this year? What is the ceiling, so to say, for this team? And if you were a GM, is there 1 or 2 moves that you would make if you were in the front office to get them to that next level?
Yeah, I would say more than anything, this doesn't have to be a championship year, right? I think the the Eastern Conference Finals trip sort of, messed with expectations, right? Where like, they probably should have been better than number 9 last year, but like the reason they were in the Eastern Conference Finals more than anything was that Philly melted down. And if they were playing a traditional number 1 seed, or even frankly a traditional number 4 seed, because the Knicks were so unusual and relied so heavily on the shooting variance of not having fans in the building, that I think they probably sort of jumped the gun a little bit. If you're a 4, 5, 6 seed, like if you're solidly in the playoffs, I'd feel pretty good, right? Like, the time to win a championship isn't right this second. The goal here is, let's see how Trey looks next to Murray. Let's see if Hunter can take a step. Let's see if Okongwu can make a step. Like, this is still a really young team. It's starting to get more expensive, and maybe there's not as much flexibility as there was a year or 2 ago. But I'm not thinking championship or bust yet. I'm thinking, let's just prove that we're solidly a playoff team. And if we could maybe like turn Capella into a first-round pick, give us a bit more trade flexibility. Or, there have been the John Collins rumors all offseason. I personally think it makes sense to keep John Collins. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's much of a market. But maybe if there's a way to get good value for him, like I don't think it's sustainable to keep all 6 of those guys at the price they're going to command. One of the bigs probably has to go. But ultimately, I'm just thinking, like, get in the mix, get the young guys better. This should be a developmental season. It shouldn't be a championship season.
Yeah, I think that's something. I think when you always have a young team, like you said, I think you're really developing. It's never, all right, we're ready to go, guys. We're just going full steam ahead. It's like, hey, we got to develop here, and we got to, make sure we get chemistry right, obviously stay healthy, and figure out an identity, which I think the Hawks, even Nate even said, didn't really have an identity last year either. But
yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit, getting Murray, I mean, it's a worse version of it. But I think back to James Harden and Chris Paul on the Rockets, where there was a little bit of worry, like, how are you going to service both of these ball handlers? Well, the advantage of having 2 of these guys isn't that they're going to play 40 minutes together. It's that they're each going to play like 15 minutes apart, and you're never not going to have a really good point guard on the floor. So I do think that makes the Hawks a pretty high floor team. I would be really surprised if they weren't at least like 500, right? Barring injuries, if everybody gets hurt, that's one thing. But barring injuries, I think the floor is like 41, 42 wins. But the upside is in the 50s. So I wouldn't be fretting too much about the immediate, but I do think the future is what really matters here.
Okay, yeah. And I guess I'll slide this one last quick question in there to you before I let you go again. What are your thoughts on head coach Nate McMillan? I feel like in the Hawks community, it's kind of split on him. People feel like, is he good enough to help this team reach their potential, or is he just serviceable? What is your thoughts on him as a head coach?
In general, outside of, 4 or 5 guys on the high end and 4 or 5 guys on the low end, I tend not to think of coaches as good or bad. I tend to think of coaches as having specific quirks and like having value in some areas and not in others. And the thing with Nate McMillan is what you kind of have to understand. Your defense is always going to be better than it probably should be. Now, last year was an exception, but they don't make the Eastern Conference Finals if the defense wasn't pretty decent the year before. But your offense is usually going to be slightly suboptimal because he just doesn't believe in shooting threes, right? Like, you're going to be near the bottom of the league for the most part. If you're a Nate McMillan team, you're just going to be running an older school offense. Now, is that the worst thing for the Hawks? No, because I think Trae Young is the sort of guy, like, there are 4 or 5 of these guys in the league at any given time that just having them on the team basically guarantees that you're going to be, top 7, top 8, top 9 on offense. You have a pretty high floor. You're never going to be a bad offensive team. So having a coach who raises the defensive floor, I think that's really important. But I do wonder when you get to the highest levels of the playoffs and when, you get to a point where teams are a bit more comfortable taking Trae Young away or, they can game plan for him a bit more. Yeah, I probably would prefer to have a more offensively inclined coach, but for now, for the time being, I think McMillan is fine. We could maybe revisit this conversation in 2 years if it feels like they've stagnated, but ultimately, I think he's a better coach than Lloyd Pierce was, and I think he's like a good, solid NBA head coach. I wouldn't be ready to fret about him yet.
Okay. Hey, that's fair. And listen, Sam, appreciate you coming on to the show today, man, taking time out of your schedule, man. Let everybody know where they can find you on social.
Yeah, Sam Quinn, CBS on Twitter. Read us at CBS Sports. This is a fun young team, man. Like, I'm really excited to watch them. Always happy to talk about the Hawks, and I really look forward to see what they do this season.
Yes, sir. Obviously, like I said, season a few months away. Have a good time watching them, see what they can look like this year. But that was your Atlanta Hawks fan show. I appreciate you guys for coming back for another episode. We'll see you next time.
To host a fan show or appear as a fan on a fan show, create a profile in Fan Media Network. Then look for the news page in our website and fan show resources page. Help yourself. We give show hosts a show graphic in team colors, a simple short show format, tips on pre- and post-production, ideas to get fans and guests on your show, Apple News distribution and show sponsorship sales and services to help featured show hosts earn money. Show hosts use our iPhone app to publish their shows. Our website supports Android users.